Jay Shear.
Jay Shear.
Jay Shear.
Jay Shear,
business consultant.
Jay Shear.
Jay Shear Business Consulting.
Welcome. I'm Jay Shear with Jay Shear Business Consulting. We build solid foundations for service-based businesses to grow and scale and achieve the results and success they deserve. And you've joined Business Minds Coffee Chat. The great Dennis Waitley said, "Losers let it happen, winners make it happen." Well, what does it take to make it happen? Is there a secret skill set that sets the optimum performers apart from the rest? Well, on this episode, we're going to explore how to become more confident, present, and in control so you can live a more responsive, less reactive life. Our guest is a father, an innovative educator, coach, entrepreneur, and a veteran of both the U.S. Navy and the U.S. Air Force. He earned his master's in sports studies at the University of Tennessee and a doctor of education in educational leadership at Virginia Commonwealth University. Go Rams.
Go Rams.
He's an expert in mindfulness, emotional intelligence, cognitive fitness, and resiliency training. Please welcome the founder of Boost Mental Toughness and Leadership, Dr. Seth Hickerson. Seth, thank you so much for being here, and thank you for your service to the country.
My pleasure, Jay. Thank you for having me. Excited to be here as always and talk to people about what it is that separates the good from the great, and then how can they do it themselves.
Outstanding. Well, we're going to go deep on a number of subjects here. And I tell you, the things that we're going to be talking about are right in my wheelhouse. So I have really been looking forward to this conversation. So let's dig right in.
Let's do it.
You had ambitions of being a pro baseball player. Mm-hmm. So share with us your journey from your background and what you did in sports to the work that you're doing today.
Yeah, I'll give you a kind of the short and sweet and dirty version of it, so to speak. But I'm from Southern Indiana originally, and I tell everybody I was a 3-sport athlete. I was a great athlete, and I was a shithead kid. You know, I was that kid that, you know, was really good at sports and could kind of show up to a game high and hung over and go 2 for 3 with a, you know, home run and a couple RBIs. And so just growing up, my identity was always tied to sport, you know, and I was going to go play. In my mind, baseball was my best sport. So I had my vision, and my plan was to go play college, you know, if I didn't get drafted right out of high school, you know, in my mind, go play college ball and then, you know, go on and have a playing career or whatever. So long story short, again, I was that kid that school was pretty easy. You know, I literally on the first day of high school asked my guidance counselor, what do I need to, what GPA do I have to play sports? You know, she said a 2.0. So I maintained a 2.0 basically through high school, which sometimes is harder than maintaining a 4.0. You know, I was that kid that could score a 20 on a test, a 30, a 42, and then the teacher would be like, hey, you have to make a 97, and I could make a 97, you know. So anyway, long story short, that was my thing. Had some scholarship opportunities for baseball that ended up drinking myself out of, you know, basically just pissed away opportunities. And then when that happened, what happened to me was I lost my identity, you know, and that's a big thing that a lot of people in our society aren't familiar with, because we're not really teaching students and youngsters about what that is and how it happens. And so once I lost that, I kind of fell into my own deep, dark depression and anxiety, and kind of pissed at the world, you know, drinking and whatever, just woe is me, pity party, because I didn't have any other plans, right? I didn't have any other, GPA was awful. I'd never thought of anything else, working dead end jobs. And I just kind of floundered around in that space for about 10 months. But fortunately had something inside me that was like, okay, you can't do this. You got to do something else. Right. And so that's when I joined the Navy. And then joined the Navy, and my first duty station was with a special ops support unit in Tokyo, Japan. So at 19, I moved, you know, to Tokyo, Japan. big transition, big shift. And that's where I started. As I reflect back, this is when I first started getting introduced to contemplative practice, Zen life, meditation, mindfulness. This was back in the, mid 90s.
Okay.
So lived in Tokyo for about 2.5 years, my first duty station. Then I was with the Seabees, which is a combat construction battalion, for my next duty station, and lived in Spain for a year. So I went from east to west, and was just living in these worlds, for 5 years out of the country, and that's when it was really really formed a lot of how I see the world. And I always noticed, like, man, it's just different over here, do you want me to go on through the whole background as to where the business is, or you stop me at any point and I can answer questions?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I would like to continue to evolve here, but I wanted to ask you, when you were first exposed to these new worlds and some of these new learnings, and exposed to mindfulness as an example, what did you think of this at that time, at your youth? Were you did you put a wall up, or were you open and accepting of it?
No, when I first found out I was going, to Atsugi, Japan, which is a Naval Air Facility, Atsugi, in Tokyo, essentially, I was excited. I've always, I've like kind of traveled around the States, but I really couldn't wrap my mind around like how different it was going to be. And the thing that I first noticed after being there for about, the first thing that really set it apart to me that things were different was after I left the States and I was in Japan for a solid year before I came home on my first 30-day leave. And I'm in Tokyo. So I'm a small town guy. I'm from Bedford, Indiana, like 25,000 people. Hot Springs, Arkansas is kind of my other hometown, 40,000 people. And so, but what I noticed was I was now in Tokyo with, 14 million or whatever the population was at the time. And when I'd come back to the States, I'd get these little small towns and it was just noisy and loud and people were pissed off and irritable, and I was thinking back to Japan and I was like, it's so peaceful, it's quiet, it's clean, it's serene, and that was that kind of Zen, that part that's ingrained in their culture. And so I was back in the States and I was like, damn, why is it so loud and irritated and everybody's just chirping and noise, So then I wanted to get back to Japan, so then when I got back to Japan, I was like, oh, thank God, it was just more. And so that was the first thing I started like going, man, what is going on with these cultures, and then I started kind of looking into it and I started noticing, oh, okay, well, this is Buddhism and it's about managing emotions and emotional control and awareness and detachment from self and all this stuff, and going to the temples and getting massages and practicing meditation. Just, I threw myself into the culture, and it was helping me, as a 19-year-old, GI that had a drinking problem and stress. And, I just started to notice this stuff felt good, so that was one of the first, or probably the biggest kind of epiphany I had.
Yeah, that is really interesting. Did it take a while for that to start to seep into your
Oh yeah,
your system, let's say, and start to change the way that you were looking at your life and relabeling things?
Yeah, it absolutely did. And it's one of those things, and a lot about what I teach now is reflection. I didn't know that what it was doing at the time, what it would end up leading to. It wasn't like, oh, boom, I was fixed, I'm now Buddhist and I'm on this Zen life, right? It's a evolution. And, looking back now and over the last 5 years, as I've started my businesses and kind of what makes up my approach and my methodology and my beliefs and my training, it all goes back to all these experiences, right? That kind of this combination of things that I was exposed to, whether I knew I was doing it or not, that got me to where, I could live healthy, happy, optimally, and all those things that people always want, and I was like, kind of, how'd all this happen? And then I went back and put it together and I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And if it works for me, it can work for anybody. So
right, absolutely. So when did you decide to go into higher education, earn your PhD, and then pursue this as a career?
Yeah. So kind of the next evolution. So did the 5 years active duty in the Navy, Japan, Spain, lived on the island of Guam, Southern California, just lived all around. And then I got out of the military, and my original thought was, okay, I'm gonna try college now. I'm kind of, got my stuff together. And so I thought I wanted to teach and coach. My whole family are educators. And so used my GI Bill, went to Indiana State, did my undergrad in health and physical education. So I have a K through 12 teaching license, but it was my sophomore year at Indiana State or my junior year at Indiana State where I took an elective class on sports psychology. And I'd never heard of that. Again, this was 20 something years ago. And a couple of things happened once I got into the sports psych class. My first thing was I was pissed off. I was like, first it made sense because I knew how to train mentally. I tell people all the time that the military is the #1 training and development organization on the planet, because what the military does, all we do is train proactively. And there's only 3 ways you can train a human being: physically, technically, and mentally. And most all of our citizens out there know about physical training and technical training. They don't know how to train mentally, proactively, treat mental health like health, not illness. Mental health, there's treatment and there's training. We live on the training side. And so I just knew how to train. And the military does a good job of teaching you how to do a lot of things like meditation and journaling and these things that you don't know that you're doing. And they may not label it as that, but you're doing these things, right? You're developing these habits and these skills. And so anyway, I got in the sports psych class, and my first thing was like, okay, this makes sense. I know how to train mentally. And then my second thing was, where the hell was this when I was in high school? Why wasn't somebody teaching me how to manage my emotions on and off the field? Maybe I would have gone on and done the things I want. So I was pissed.
Right.
And I was like, I'm going to learn more about this sports psych stuff. So I got a great mentor, a professor of the class, Dr. Kathy Ginter, who's still part of my business now. She's been a part of my life personally and professionally, but she said, okay, I'm going to kind of gear you up to go to, she did a PhD in sports psych from University of Tennessee. So she kind of groomed me. I went to the University of Tennessee to work on sports studies with a sports psychology emphasis, did my master's, was missing the military, got back in the Air Force, joined the Air Force, so cross-branched, because I was still in this like mindset of like, man, do I really want to go do this civilian stuff? Because it's hard for veterans to come out and like, if we don't have a mission or a purpose or something, it's hard for us to just take a normal job, So was going to get my commission as an officer and go to flight school after graduate school so I was drilling at Langley and doing the Air Force stuff, doing graduate school, doing all that. Also got my CSCS, which is a certified strength conditioning specialist. So I've just always been a coach and a high performance guy, but I was starting to really develop this mental piece was my edge. That was the differentiator, and the mental piece, like we'd said at the beginning of this thing, that's what separates good from great in any industry. I don't care if you're a stay-at-home mom or a Navy SEAL, right? It's the mind, it's the mindset that elevates you. 1,000 push-ups doesn't protect a fragile mind. I say that all the time, right?
So true.
So anyway, I finished the master's sports psych stuff, went to University of Richmond, oversaw fitness and wellness, taught some classes there at U of R, which you're familiar with also. And then I did my doctorate at VCU in educational leadership. So I just had all this experience, but the thing that I was training throughout this whole thing, a lot of high performance athletes, right? Professional and college level, golfers, football, basketball, baseball on the mental game. If you want to be the best athlete, period, you have to learn how to train mentally or you're never going to get there. And so just doing all this stuff. But then my vision was I wanted to make this skill set available to everybody else, not just the elite, And so that was the original idea of Boost, which is operating right now. And then our new business, My Steady Mind, which we can talk about, is the next one that's getting ready to launch probably at the end of this month. But originally it was to bring high level mental skills, sports psychology type training to the 14 and 15-year-old Seth Hickersons of the world out there in small town, that would never have access to something like that. And so that was the original idea. So we built it, and we was to have a high tech, high touch approach online, make it scalable so they could come in and have the online training component, and it's all built in practicality and application. It's not just talking. And then we could train up coaches, to lead it throughout. So it's a beautiful model, and we got it out there. But, my level of training, I'd say right now, and everything I've built is a little too high for a high school kid, just kind of general. We're working on a program that kind of can bring it down a little bit more to that age group. And then ultimately, the ultimate goal, what all this is, and a lot of even what sports psychology is really kind of a bait and switch, right? So you get these athletes in there, they lean into this approach to help reduce stress and improve performance, but you're teaching them all the stuff they need to reduce all stress, So, if I can teach you how to, overcome the yips in putting, and how to control your nervous system and how to reframe your thoughts and literally neuroplasticity change the structure of your brain. It's going to help you manage stress with your job, your relationship, your kids, whatever.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, it creates a ripple effect, obviously, that runs throughout all areas of our life. And I would have loved to have come in contact with you many, many years ago when I really first started my corporate career, because you're so right when you mentioned that so much of this is not something that we train on. It's not something that we're taught in college. But it's so critically important to success in all areas. And, you hit on the managing the stress component of it. I mean, that's one big piece of it, but there's so many other areas to being able to manage your mindset and all the other incredible things that you teach. Yeah. So I would love to dive in a bit on some of the tactical offerings that Boost provides. So let's talk about stress for a moment, because there are so many different stressors that we all experience in our lives, and especially what we went through in 2020 and what we're going through today, from a very trying political season to COVID to job losses, all the other things that we're all experiencing. So how would you help those that are dealing with stress to help them better manage it? What are some tactical things that we can do?
Yeah, two things. One, I just want to, can we also, Boost is the business that's going to be going away in a few months, and My Steady Mind is the new one. So I just want to make sure users and us talk about like the My Steady Mind, because it's kind of everything that we took from Boost and bigger, better. So if you hear me say My Steady Mind, or anybody does, like, what is it? So My Steady Mind is the new, bigger, better version of Boost. So
got it.
Anybody listening to this that might have interest moving forward will go to the mysteadymind.com and do all that stuff.
Perfect.
So a couple things, right? That when I started the My Steady Mind approach was like, what industries do we want to work in? And it's a lot of healthcare, helping doctors and nurses with burnout, emotional exhaustion, law enforcement. We're getting into some colleges. We're getting into real estate, which is an amazing industry, as I'm learning, that's very volatile and stressful. And but to answer your question, the thing in our approach that makes us, I think, unique is we cut through all the BS, right? All the noise that's out there about mindfulness, emotional intelligence. It's all kind of theory, and we think, but nobody knows how to do it. So at Boost, at My Steady Mind, we have a formula, right? The steady mind concept is most people's minds, especially after 2020, are not very steady. We're worried, we're ruminating, we're stressful, right? Literally, you could see a brain that, every thought requires energy. And so that's why so many people are tired, exhausted, worn out, because their monkey mind is just in 24/7 stress, stimulus, bombarding, email, responsibilities. So the flow state, the zone, is what we used to refer it into in athletes, right? It's called Zen in the ancient world, is when you have a steady mind, right? I'm alert but relaxed. I'm present. I'm in the moment. I'm able to respond. I'm able to change my perception of stimulus that I might have normally perceived as a threat to something of an opportunity. And so the only way a person can have a steady mind is through training. You can't read a self-help book. You can't watch a motivational speaker. Somebody can't just tell you what. You've got to learn how to do it. And there's only one way you can do it, right? And that's what we show people how to do. So, if I get off your question, just let me know. But I know you're asking about some tactics. And the term I say is tactical resiliency. Okay. What do I apply in the moment, right? When shit hits the fan, whatever it might be, screaming kids or a bad email or whatever, right? So some of the things we teach are, visualization tactics, stop sign, visualize a stop sign, visualize your language as a printed sentence in your mind, watch it flush down the toilet, biohacking techniques, because everything high performers know how to do is we know how to control our central nervous system. And manipulate it. You got your sympathetic and your parasympathetic. Sympathetic is when I get stressed, my fight, flight, or freeze. Parasympathetic, the parachute, is what calms you down. So you have to have biohacking techniques to activate the parasympathetic when you notice the sympathetic arising. Most people in our population today, because they don't have this skill set and they're not familiar with how the brain works, and I can nerd out as much as you want me to nerd out, but they basically just get up in the morning and they're in sympathetic overdrive all day. Literally, it feels like you're dying, right? Because we're perceiving all these things as threats. Your brain doesn't know that you're perceiving a bad email or a screaming kid or a meeting in 10 minutes as a threat. All it knows is you got a crocodile on your ass right now. And so we get burnt out, we make bad decisions, we fatigue. And so that's just not a fun, optimal place to live in any industry. And so you have to learn routines and techniques and learn how to train mental health just like physical health.
So to be able to go from the sympathetic nervous system to the parasympathetic, what is that switch like? So what are the levers that we can pull specifically that can activate that part of our central nervous system quickly?
BAMO. So BAMO is one of the first breathing techniques we teach at My Steady Mind. It means breathe and move on. BAMO, breathe and move on. And we can do one, right? So it's a simple breathing technique. We have 9 breathing techniques that we teach through my company, and each one kind of serves a different purpose. But one that you and everybody out there listening to today can start practicing, and I'll tell you how practicing it means. But when we notice we're getting stressed, right? I'm getting anxious, I feel it. And then you say or think BAMO, and then you take a 4-second inhalation through the nose, counting, and we'll do one here in a minute. I'll walk us through one. All right. And then a 4-second exhalation out, pushing through out the mouth to the stomach. That 3 or 4 seconds of deep inhalation. Most people breathe very short and shallow all day. They're just up here. So you can't flip the parasympathetic. You have to intentionally breathe long and deep into the belly, and that gets in and we'll flip the switch. And you'll feel it when we do this, right? Even if you're not stressed out, you'll feel the parasympathetic engage. And when you exhale, it'll almost feel like a little cool ripple going down your body. That's your parasympathetic releasing its cocktail to calm you down, right? So we'll do one, and then I'll talk a little bit more about it. So I'll say 3, 2, 1, and just shut your eyes, breathe in through the nose. And when we count, so if we're scared and there's a lot of noise going on in my head or whatever, and we think BAMO, and the counting internally is good because it shuts that stuff off. 1, for a little pause, right? That's all we need, just a break, a split second, so I can get back in the game.
All right, perfect. Right. So before you go through that exercise, for those that are listening to this right now, if you are in your car or on a vehicle, stop or come back to this and then try this exercise. We want everybody to be safe.
They can still do BAMO, just don't shut your eyes.
There you go. Don't shut your eyes.
Yeah, you can still do the breath, and activate it, but just don't shut your eyes if you're driving now.
Perfect. All right. Take us through it.
All right. So I'll say 3, 2, 1. And then if you can shut your eyes, shut them. If not, don't. And the key is you're going to breathe in through the nose and really filling up the belly. You can put your hand on your stomach if you want. You want to make sure the air gets down into the stomach, into the diaphragm, right? Because the diaphragms really where you start to get that activation. Mm-hmm. And then when you get, then I'll exhale. And when you exhale, you blow it out. And I should be able to hear it. Your mouth should be like, it's not push that air out.
Okay.
Right. And maybe I'll count you through one, and then I'll let you do one on your own, and then we'll come back.
Perfect.
All right.
Okay.
3, 2, 1. Inhale deep. 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Do another one and pay attention to how you feel on both phases.
Everything slows down.
So what you're doing is you're toggling between your sympathetic and parasympathetic. The sympathetic, when you breathe in, you could feel yourself starting to be a little more alert, right? You're starting to kind of like feel almost anxious. And then when you exhale, you toggle into the relaxed. And so with breathing techniques, and everybody that's listening, it doesn't necessarily mean, hey, just go remember BAMO and do it when you get pissed off tomorrow, right? Like it's good, but better is when you practice it. So sit around and do a minute of breathing. Just sit around, intentionally carve out and just do some of those breaths, practice some of them. And the intention is I'm doing this to help me relieve stress. And like everything else, when you practice breathing, eventually it will automate. And so then you'll get to kind of like where I'm at now. And I can just be driving in my car, doing my thing, chilling. And all of a sudden my body will take a breath, and it's almost like a game. I have to figure out, okay, what the hell was about to stress me out? And I'm like, oh, there was a song on the radio that reminds me of my ex. Like my body is conditioned that at the onset of something that I might normally perceive as a stress, it takes that breath, so it doesn't even let it enter the hopper. It doesn't become a thought, emotion, action, right?
Yeah. So what's the brain chemistry cocktail, if you will, that's being delivered when we do this exercise? What's creating that switch to happen?
Dopamine's a big one. There's a bunch of just different chemicals that make us feel good, feel alert. The thing that I help people understand is like, it's the same chemical cocktail both ways. People think that, if I'm scared because I'm about to get in a car wreck, or if I'm scared because my wife's yelling at me, that it's some different cocktail. It's not. The only difference is, what are we perceiving that stressor to be, a threat or an opportunity? And then your body adjusts. Does that make sense?
It does.
So if it's norepinephrine or dopamine or whatever's being pumped through, once we can change our perception, particularly of something that would normally be a stress, then it uses it as an opportunity. It kind of reroutes it, makes it more advantageous. Like if you start to understand that there's nothing physiologically different when we feel excited or anxious. It's what you call it that matters, right?
Interesting. So let me ask you a question to that point. The event itself, or the trigger, whatever that is, it's the story that we tell ourselves about that. It's not the thing itself. Is that right?
Yep. It all comes down to basically everything in life that we do is contingent upon our relationship to stimulus. So stimulus is what dictates everything we see, taste, touch, hear, feel, or smell, right? So the way our brains and bodies work, we get exposed to a stimulus, and then based on how we get that, see, touch, taste, smell, hear, feel, right? We get exposed to a stimulus, and then depending on what kind of mindset we have to perceive that stimulus. And you can only perceive all stimulus as, your brain's very simple, right? It's a very simple machine. It can only perceive all stimulus as good or bad, threat or opportunity. That's it. And it's up, whatever you determine that stimulus to be is how your body's going to respond. And so high level mental skills training is ultimately, and this is what I tell everybody from kind of a big picture, right? Our goal in life should be able to eliminate any and all negative stimulus in our life. Toxic friends, toxic social media, toxic news, toxic people, anything that's negative. Because I'll give you a little quick thing too. The way our brain works to form neural pathways, it's called STIA. Stimulus creates a thought creates an emotion. Emotion is energy in motion, and emotions drive action. So everything we want to protect is our actions, And so if you don't have any mental skills training, there's no gaps. You're at the mercy of all stimulus. And we know most stimulus in the world is negative. So if 75% of the stimulus I'm experiencing on a daily basis is negative, then 75% of my thoughts are negative, 75% of my emotions are negative, and 75% of my actions are negative. Period. That's how it works. And so what you're doing is intentionally going out, and let's say I went through and did a total purge of all toxic stuff in my life, relationships, family, whatever. That would only account for about 10% of the stimulus I encounter on a daily basis.
Wow, that's it?
Yeah. The training is, how do I defend myself against the 90% of stimulus I can't control? That's where you separate yourself, right? So you go out into the, in the military, with the term we use is being unfuckwithable, right? That means I have mastery of self-awareness, mastery of situational awareness. I can step out into any environment, and no matter how sideways it gets, I can be present, I can be confident, I can run towards the action instead of, and that's just high level training. And everything comes down to stimulus and your perception of it.
Amazing. So a couple of things that you said that I want to make sure that we are shining a spotlight on, because it's so critically important. And this is definitely an area that I've had to work on and cultivate over the years. And that is removing some of that negativity from my life, whether it's negative people, negative conversations, negative media, all of those things. And, we don't always think about the impact that it really has on our lives, because we think, oh, well, it's a small thing, right? It's 10 minutes of the news, or it's,
Yeah.
it's being around someone who's talking about all the woes in the world.
Right.
But it stays with us. We start to, you've heard the comment before, or the saying that we're the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with. You start to look around your inner circle and your friends and those where you really do spend the most time with, and you'll learn a lot about yourself by looking at those individuals, how
Because it's
they
all
show
stimulus.
up to the world.
They're
It's
all stimulus.
amazing.
So one of the things, and I love that you brought this up, and because I try to make things very simple for people to understand and know that none of us are unique. None of us are special as much as we like to think we are. People maybe, oh no, Seth, you don't know how I got, you don't know. If you have a brain, barring mental retardation or significant mental illness, it works one way, whether you're black, white, Indian, Asian, female, it doesn't matter, right? So on the news media and social media, because the hardest part is what you said, it's starting to be honest about where I spend my most valuable resources, my time and my attention, right? On what stimulus gets my time and attention. And so every human's the most valuable things we have. And that's going to dictate how your life goes, right? Where do you spend? Do you waste your time and attention? Do you invest your time and attention? What's the balance? So where do most people in our society waste a lot of time and attention? Social media and news media. Social media and news media know how your brain works, and they know you don't. So all human brains, when we get up, and this is based on survival, we operate on 2 levels of awareness: conscious awareness and subconscious awareness. So when we get up and out of bed and we go about our day, wherever you are in life and whatever you're doing, we're kind of consciously scanning the environment for things, but we're always subconsciously scanning it for 3 things. It's our limbic brain. We're on the lookout for these 3 things, right? Can I eat it? Can I sleep with it? Can it kill me? That's what we are looking for, right? We need it for survival, reproduction, and advancement of the species. And so when we know most people out there aren't aware of that, right? So news media uses fear-based sensationalism, because what do they want? They want your action. So they're going to use a stimulus that they know is going to bypass your rational thinking frontal lobe and get to that limbic brain, because that's where the action is. So if you turn on the news today, you're going to see a good-looking reporter talking about 25 dead somewhere, followed by cheeseburger commercials. The holy trinity of stimulus that makes a human stop in their tracks. They look up and they see the pretty girl or guy. Oh, can I sleep with that? And then they see, oh my God, 25 dead in Rio. Oh my God, can it kill me? Cheeseburger. Oh, can I eat it? That hits your limbic brain and freezes you. And people think they're watching the news. I'm just going to watch the news. That is designed to control your thoughts, your actions, your votes, your spendings, that's the way it is. And then people are like, oh my gosh, no news. And they do not care that it makes you feel scared, less than, racist, isolated. They don't care. They want your clicks. They want your views. They want you to keep it on that channel. Mm-hmm. Then the person is like, oh my God, I'm scared. He's just like, I'm just going to go mindlessly look at Facebook, right? You don't do anything mindlessly. Our minds never shut off. It's always working, processing. So now I come over here and they use fantasy-based sensationalism. So it's fear-based over here, now fantasy-based over here. Like Instagram, what was it? All pictures of food. We can't not look at good food. Then it turned into pictures of sex, right? That's not the real world. That's not what's going on. That's a stimulus that makes you add, follow, click. And then what does it do to the person in the middle, the actual human in the present moment? I feel scared and less than. Good luck with the rest of your day, dude.
Yeah. Because we're playing that comparison game.
Yeah, I mean, it's called the race to the bottom of the limbic stem. I mean, that's what they're trying to do. And you have to learn how to defend yourself against that, or you're at the mercy of it. So
let's talk then. And I want to, if we can get one more tactical or strategic tool from you, that would be outstanding. But the work that you do, so when you're working with high performing teams or someone that really wants to level up their game, part of the process that you go through would be extracting them from all of these stressors and the areas that trap us and that pull us in, and turning off the news, kind of looking at your friends and your associates and figuring out who actually supports my goals and who's sucking my energy. Are those the kinds of things that you go through in addition to all the other tool sets you provide?
Oh yeah. I mean, and that's what my business is designed. Like, it's not an overnight process. It's progressive acquisition of skills, right? And so our approach is, and this will give you kind of another example of a tactic, right? So the skill, and this is what a lot of people don't understand, things like gratitude, confidence, focus, those are skills, and they can, I don't care how shitty you are at gratitude right now, you can get better. I don't care if you're not an empathetic person, you can improve, but it takes training, right? And you have to do a certain thing before a certain thing. And that's where the training comes in. Like, I'm not a 10x your life in a weekend guy. That's bullshit. It doesn't happen that way, right? It works this way. And so you have to give people the tools. So the approach is coming back to your school thing. The reason nobody really knows how to do this, and I won't get up on my soapbox, but as a doctorate in educational leadership, right? Our schools are designed to not produce healthy, independent thinking people. So we teach towards IQ, not EQ. IQ means learning about things outside of me, math, science, history. Those are important, but we deliberately suppress divergent thinking, right? Because we want control. We want to, learned helplessness is the byproduct. So if people do not know how to look inwardly and hold themselves accountable and reflect without, beating myself up, then they're in a helpless position. And that's what a super capitalistic country wants, right? I love this country, but we've got hidden agendas with what we expect out of our people. So just the training I do is, hey, you don't get this in school, right? And so to answer your question, like gratitude, okay, gratitude is the skill that pulls me out of my deepest, darkest moments. Our brains are wired with a negativity bias. It is not easy for us to be grateful. I use the analogy back in the caveman days. If I walked out of a cave, if I was a cave woman and I walked out of a cave and I looked to the left and saw a big, beautiful rainbow, and I looked to the right and saw a crocodile, screw the rainbow. The crocodile I'd have to know where that threat is for survival. I imprint the time, the date, the location, how many trees are around it, where it was exactly, right? Because that is an immediate threat to can it kill me? Yeah. So our brains we don't go out looking for good news. That's why good newspapers and stuff, that doesn't work, right? So we have to train ourselves. So for example, you give people a gratitude journal. You say, okay, for the next week, and this is what we do. And there's like 3 prompts. At the end of the day, you look back on this journal and, today I felt great when blank, blank, blank. Today I was happy when I did this, right? You're forcing people to do it. And every time they do that, it's like a mental rep. It almost feels hard or corny doing it, right? Like, because you're breaking these old neural pathways. And so gratitude takes training. And you have to keep doing it. You have to do it. You can't do a gratitude journal for one day and all of a sudden you're the most grateful person on the planet. You got to get reps in. Condition.
And we're doing that at the end of the day with those 3 prompts.
Yeah, depending on what we like in my training, we as they go through my training's 9 modules, right? Each module covers a certain skill like gratitude, confidence, resiliency, focus, emotional intelligence, and each one of those has a specific reflection activity that you do. It has a breathing technique that you do. It has other tips and tricks that you can do to be more resilient. And this is stuff you have to do every, it's not a heavy lift because your brain's amazing. It's not like physical health. If I want my arms to get big, I got to work out an hour every day for 6 weeks, for 3 months before I see a half an inch. When you do the right thing for your mind with the right strategy and approach and the right reflections and everything, quick, neuroplasticity is fast.
Love it. Yeah. Since you brought that up, just in layman's terms, just give us a very quick description of what neuroplasticity means and why that's important and why we should all understand how that can impact us and help us change.
Okay, good question. So, and it's good that you called that out because I'll say a lot of things and I'm like, don't they know that? But no, neuroplasticity. So basically, the first term I help people understand is mindset. So how often do we hear people talking about mindset? Oh, your mindset, right? But most people don't truly know what that means. All human brains, yours and mine included, and everybody out there listening, has a current mindset. So that's literally your brain, your neural network, right? Your brain has formed a mindset based on all the stimulus you've had exposure to, whether you're 20, 50, or 70, all the events and things that have happened in your life and your relationship and your perception of all that has formed through that STIA process, stimulus, thought, emotion, action. That's what forms neural pathways. So you have a mindset, right? And so forever, researchers and people thought a person couldn't just change their mindset, right? It had to come as a way of a traumatic event or a big religious experience. Something had to happen to a person that just shook them to the core, and tomorrow they were different. Okay. Well, about 40 or 50 years ago with advanced imaging, And as science has evolved, we found, and they did this through doing MRIs, fMRIs on monks meditating. We found that you can proactively and intentionally restructure your brain. So the brain is a result of neural pathways, right? You say something long enough, strong enough, beliefs, what you hear the term, what fires together, wires together, right? So if you say I'm a loser, a piece of shit, nobody likes me long enough, it's going to form and it's going to create that belief. And then if you say it long enough, whatever it is, then it creates a neural bundle. And then it's kind of like locked in place almost. It's a big network of these thoughts. And then that creates your neural network. That's how that person sees the world, believes about themselves, believes whatever they do. But with this training, it was the biggest breakthrough really in kind of brain science, was to say, oh my God, like these monks that meditate are it's called neural pruning. You break the neural pathway, do something, and you form a new one. Break an open, form a new one, right? And so that is one of the big kind of the paramount findings, is that like we can intentionally, proactively restructure, reprogram our brains to a certain thing.
Interesting.
Yeah. So neuroplasticity just means that the brain's ability to be malleable to, to, which they've known it could do that, but I think the community didn't really know that you could do it kind of without some significant, traumatic event, so to speak.
Wow. That's super powerful. So would this be akin to replacing bad habits, recognizing behaviors and habits, and then being able to find out what the trigger is, what that cycle is, and interrupt it?
Yeah. I mean, it's depending on what, like what we do is like, I'm not this isn't a treatment. I'm not a therapist. This is coaching. It's not counseling, but it's depending on what your habits are. I mean, I've worked with people that have had all the bad habits, right? You name it, drugs, alcohol, drinking, isolation, and if you take this approach and this tool and this way to go about it, it can certainly help those things, right? Maybe even eliminate them. I don't come in and say, hey, get rid of all your medications and do this, but whatever our habits are is a result of our mindset. And
interesting.
You can change your mindset. So, I mean, I've struggled with alcohol. That was a big one of me for many years, I've had a lot of bad habits, still got a handful, but I've been able to keep most everything at bay, because this is what I do. And it's a daily thing, and some days I'm better. It's like a physical health routine, right? I go to the gym 5 or 6 days a week. And if I do that, I'm good. Same with your mental health routine. That's not, you can't do a really good weekend workshop of meditation and reflection and now you're fit for life. The problem is people like my body, right? I can see myself and whether I'm working out or not working out. I can see it. We can't see our minds because it's encased in the skull. It doesn't grow like a bicep. It grows, through connections. So it's one of those things that like people, they kind of hard, literally pun intended, to wrap their mind around it, because I can't see it. Now if we had a fMRI or something around, you would be able to see it, but you'll feel it, and usually what I tell people as they start this is usually the people around you are going to feel it, notice it before you do. You're going to put off a different energy. You're going to just, that's what everything comes down to, right? Energy.
Yeah, for sure. Seth, you brought something up just a moment ago when we were just kind of talking about habits, and you were mentioning some of the bad habits that you've had in the past, and maybe some that you still have that you're continuing to work on. That, to me, though, that's a very powerful point, and that is the self-awareness component, because you recognize many of those, right? So those are things that you're continuing to work on. There are many of us out there that aren't even aware that we have these bad habits, these negative habits that are taking us down a rabbit hole and are affecting many, many other areas of our life. So I think that self-awareness piece, to me, is a very powerful one.
It's the most powerful. There's really, and I talk about, there's the two things that we have to start to get a hold of: self-awareness and self-regulation. So self-awareness is having the awareness that, okay, I've got these bad habits, right? This is why I really like Buddhism. Buddhism's about, how do I observe myself and not evaluate myself? How do I look down kind of over me and to say, okay, without judgment, without criticism, observationally, right? And then, because that's the only way you can fix things, right? If we can just look and say internally, man, okay, yeah, I suck at this. We all do. We've all got it, right? I'm not a good drinker. You know, I don't do this well. Like whatever your stuff is, right? Welcome to the club. But it's our ego, which is another reason why I like Buddhism, because it's about getting rid of that ego. That's what causes all suffering, right? So, and that I can't just tell you that. You have to kind of learn it. But if you can get to a place where you can, and that's what my program, it gives you the tools to force the action. Take this thing and go do it, you know, and it's going to make you reflect. And it does it in a fun way that it's not like, yeah, look at you, you're screwed up. Like, welcome to the club, right? But you can't, you know, you can't beat your enemy if you don't first acknowledge them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
So
then
true.
then you have to have the regulation stuff, because you're still going to screw up. You're still going to have bad days, right? We don't grab, like you said, we don't latch on and go down the rabbit hole. We just note it, you know, let it go. Don't let that sympathetic nervous system take control, you know, give us that split second pause, that gap between stimulus and thought, so that I can make a better decision and not, you know, be toast the rest of the day and torch everything in my path.
Incredible. You know, I've heard the saying before many, many times that pain is inevitable, suffering is optional.
The choice.
Yeah, it's a choice.
Choice.
Which, you know, it really is incredible to think about that. But I love that you bring up that pause, right? Taking that moment, breathing. So much can happen in that small little space. And I've talked about this before, but I was given a little piece of paper a few years back, right around Valentine's Day. And on it was a handwritten note that said, "Let me see this differently." And it's such a small thing, but Seth, I have that in my car and I look at that every single day. And when a situation comes up, whether it's maybe a car cuts me off or you name it, all the different emotions that come up during the day, I think about that little piece of paper and what it does for me. It's just that split second pause. Let me see this differently. And sometimes that's all it takes, just that space that you're talking about.
And what you said too, from a mental performance guy, right? Because we can talk about emotions, right? That's what we're talking about, right? Emotions drive all actions. And we've never been taught as a society how to manage emotions, so we suppress them. You know, that's my only tool I had in my emotional toolkit forever was alcohol. Good, happy, sad, bad, whatever. I didn't, and again, I'm going to save this maybe for another time, but that's by design. We don't come into our school systems when the brains are in this critical developmental stage, 11 to 15. And in that stage is when all humans, their brain, just like age 2 to 5 is like language communication. It's natural. It's ripe for that. 11 to 15 is when human beings start doing two things, right? They start to form an identity. When you're a kid that's 0 to 10, you really don't see she's a girl, he's white, he's black, like unless a parent is calling it out. But like kids at that age really don't notice much that I'm different. They think we're all just kind of like kids, right? And they don't really feel stress. They can get pissed off or angry. I got 3 boys, a 7, a 5, and a 3-year-old, right? But physiologically, it doesn't affect them until they start really getting into that 11 to 15, because then that's when they start forming identity. Okay, I am different. Society starts putting more expectations on them. They start to feel the physiological effects of stress. And if we do not teach kids in that window what's going on and then give them proactive tools to manage those emotions, what are they all going to do? Suppress. That's all you know, right? Fighting, bullying, isolation, drinking, drugging, right? Not because they're bad kids, we just didn't give them any options. And so that's a really kind of a Western problem more so than other places. But that's why all of us are in our 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, like, God, why, I don't even want to talk about them because we've never been provided an opportunity to talk about them. They're good, they're fine, they're normal. So we have this skewed, weird relationship. We don't know what to do with them when they pop up. And so it's, you know, that's just what's going on. And that causes a lot of pain and suffering and broken homes and families and jobs and relationships, you know?
Yeah. I love this conversation. I love what you're doing. I want to find out from you. Clearly you're well-read, love the educational background, love what your mission is with your business and what you're doing with your clients. Are there 1 to 2 books that you would recommend to our audience that has had a substantial impact on the way that you show up to the world?
Buddha's brain, first and foremost. That's what a lot of, I'm not a Buddhist, I've got the podcast GI Buddha, but I think Buddhism, Buddha in my mind, he was a guide, not a god. He taught the Dharma, which was his. I'm kind of the same way. I'm your guide. I'm not a god. It's like my eightfold path, right? Here's my Dharma. Do this, young grasshopper, follow this. And so, but all the science and stuff that's coming out as we study and learn more about the brain is that we find out a lot of what was talked about in that makes sense. It's practical, it's pragmatic, it's not concerned with, very, what other, so Buddha's brain especially from a brain guy, right, I love it because it talks about what's happening globally is there's a convergence of East meeting West. Mysticism and science are starting to merge, right? And that's what we're starting to see is, okay, hey, these things that they've talked about for thousands and thousands of years, they work and we can prove it. So Buddha's brain's one.
Perfect.
Another one I like is stop doing that shit, or unfuck yourself.
Yeah.
Those are good ones. I like a lot of Mark Manson stuff because it's real, it's raw, it's none of this rah, you can do it,
Right.
It's like, here's how it works. You're not unique. Here's the problem. Go do this, right? And that's kind of how I like, because I think we live in a world where there's a lot of people that really don't know how to necessarily teach you how to do it. So they just talk about it and they make it sound very grandiose. And I'm like, no, okay, you want to get down, you want to get dirty, you want to get real. There's only one way to get you there, and we got to get honest, we got to get honest. We got to get open, got to be comfortable, asking for help. You got to be comfortable doing these things that we've been conditioned as society to not do, especially as men. And so those are two or three that I'd highly recommend.
Yeah.
You're a badass.
Great.
So another good tip, if there's any female listeners that may be like, oh, that's too manly, like anything by Jen Sincero. So you're a badass. You're a badass at making money. Same mindset, same kind of practitioner of the stuff we do. Awesome writers, funny. So those are a handful of books.
Perfect. Love it. So I have Buddha's Brain right over here in my bookshelf. That's an excellent read. I would agree with you on that point. You're a Badass. My wife actually has that book. I stumbled across that one the other day. And Unf Yourself is, wow. That one I don't own the book, but I listened to the audio book. And like you said, raw, but practical. And oh my gosh, so much great, powerful information in there. So thank you. I appreciate you sharing those recommendations.
Yeah.
So what are you doing now to challenge yourself to grow personally and professionally?
Grow a business. be an entrepreneur of a startup. So I'm in a term we use in the military, right? One of the things that helps is learning how to embrace the suck. So, being a first time, now I've got a couple businesses, but, really starting to launch my steady mind and get it out there in a big way. So, I have to practice a lot, and I'm a single dad with 3 boys under 7. So, I have to practice what I preach. I have to be about it. I've got to conserve my energy, protect my time and my attention, be grateful. So, I think the thing that's kind of, and I love it, that's forcing me to grow is just, being an entrepreneur, trying to grow a business, and all that entails.
Fantastic response. And our audience made up of many entrepreneurs and small and mid-sized business owners. So I know your response is certainly going to resonate with our audience for sure.
Yeah, that whole community, when people find out like what we do, I don't know how many times they said, do you work with entrepreneurs? Because the fear and the, and I'm like, well, yeah, I love to work with entrepreneurs. Any entrepreneurs out there listening that want to kind of adopt and implement this mindset, I promise you it will help you with whatever stage you're at in growing your business or starting it. Because it's all a result, that's what separates the good entrepreneurs from the greats, the ones that don't cave, that are not going to quit, that stay opportunistic, that perceive threats as opportunities, all the stuff we've been talking about. So yeah.
You are right on with that comment. And so what overall message would you like to leave our audience with?
Yeah. I always tell everybody, like, just be kind to yourself. That's a hard thing. We can be kind and grateful to others, but when it comes to us, we just, like I say, the voices in our head, we'd be, if that was on a megaphone, it would be miserable. We wouldn't say that to our worst enemies, you know, and that mental skills and mindfulness is about having a relationship with our thoughts, a relationship so that those voices in our head can be our best teammate, not our worst enemy, because that's what's going to determine what you do or don't do. And everybody that's listening, wherever you're at, you know, you can get there, you can get better, you know, even if you're already somebody into this kind of putting in work, you know, there's just, and once you get that, like the sky's the limit. And that's everybody I say this to all the time, right? The world is full of super talented, unsuccessful people, you know, ton of skills, ton of talents, businesses that haven't been started, you know, medicines that, I mean, whatever, you name it. And it's because that fear mindset, that learned helplessness mindset, that worry about what other people are going to think, right? And so I want everybody to maximize their gifts, their human potential. And the only thing that does that is by, I say this all the time, the most powerful thing you can do with your mind is change it.
Wow. Absolutely. Well, before I ask my final question to you, let us all know where we can connect with you, where we can consume your content and learn more about all of the great services that you offer.
Well, I'd say the best thing is to go. So I told you we still have a boostabove.com is kind of running. So if people want to visit that just to see it, there's a free assessment that anybody out there can take on the www.aboostabove.com. Another thing we understand is, you know, in God we trust, all others bring data. And so data is a reason why emotions and stuff like that have never been operationalized, which is what we do. So if you want to go to aboostabove.com and click on the free pre-assessment, take it. It takes about 15 minutes. Put on there Business Minds Coffee Chat, because they'll ask you organization. So I'll know where these people came from. Okay. And then I can maybe set up a free, you know, 5, 10, 15-minute call to talk to people about as the results and any interest they have in the business. mysteadymind.com, you can go to that. The full site's not up yet, but you can also go there, put your email address in, and we'll send you notifications. We're shooting to have the whole new thing up and running by the end of this month, the new course, the new site.
Perfect.
So, you know, if you want to go to aboostabove.com to take the free assessment, which I think you took it, Jay, right? Did I send it to you or no?
I have not taken it, but it is going to be the next thing I do.
Yeah, so go there and then you grab the link and have your people take it, or the listeners, mysteadymind.com. And then as always, my contact information, Seth@mysteadymind.com. Shoot me an email. Let me know you heard it or you're listening and you want to know more, and I'd be glad to connect. Seth@mysteadymind.com.
Fantastic. Well, we will make sure that we link to all of those in the show notes. And thank you for your generous offer to set up a call with our listeners and have at least a 10, 15-minute conversation with you to learn more about how you can serve and help all of us level up and improve in our lives. So here's my final question to you. What's one of the biggest gifts that life's given you that you didn't realize at the time?
That's one of the biggest gifts that life has given me. I mean, it may sound cliche, and it's something I've only really come to realize over the last few years, is presence. The ability to truly be present with my kids, present with my time I spend with people. You know, I never really knew what that was until I actually started living it, you know? And so I think it gave me time back. It gave me, you know, hope back. It gave me opportunities back, relationships. So, and I think that presence in the world we live in is something that most of us are struggling with. We're always time traveling somewhere else, right? Forward or backwards. And you miss what's right in front of you, you know? So I love, if you got people, 2 movies I would recommend that I watched recently that I think kind of encapsulate this is Soul on Disney Plus. Soul, Soul, on Disney Plus. Animated, great, talks about kind of what I'm saying here in a Disney way. And then if you have Amazon Prime, The Sound of Metal is another one. That one's not for the kids, The Sound of Metal, but 2 movies that I think really talk about just how important presence is. And so I'd say that's the thing I think I've really gained the most, that's been the most impactful.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. Dr. Seth, thank you so very much for being here with us today on Business Minds Coffee Chat. And I'm grateful that we connected, and I'm so appreciative of you being here and sharing your knowledge and your experience and your tools with us. So it's been, I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, and I look forward to continuing our relationship and seeing where we can grow together. So thank you very, very much for being here.
You're welcome. My pleasure. If this stuff works for me, it can work for everybody listening. That's what I say. I've tried everything else, right? And if this stuff helps me on a day-to-day basis, I know it can help you and everyone listening, but you have to put in a little work.
There you go. Fantastic. Do the work. And for all of you, thank you very much for watching and listening. And please take a moment to subscribe and do us a favor. Let Dr. Seth and I know what you thought of this episode and maybe a couple of your key takeaways. We would greatly appreciate that. And to enjoy more episodes and to learn how Jay Shear Business Consulting can build a solid foundation for your service-based business, just visit jshearbusinessconsulting.com. And until next time, keep learning and growing. Visit My Steady Mind, and we'll see you on the next Business Minds Coffee Chat.
And Bammoing. Breathe and
Bammo. We'll see you on the next Business Minds Coffee Chat. Take care, everybody.
Jay Shear Business Consultant.
Jay Shear Business Consulting.